Over the past 10 to 15 years, we've seen a dramatic resurgence of the tourniquet in the civilian world. This primarily comes from the high degree of success that this tool has had in places such as Iraq, Afghanistan, and other places where we have soldiers deployed. We're seeing very high numbers of successful outcomes from tourniquet use. But let's look at the context of this. Typically when a soldier is out on the battlefield, they're wearing body armor. They have at least a soft plate carrier, sometimes a hard plate carrier, as well as a Kevlar helmet. So from here to here, they're protected. They're protecting their head and also their torso. Their extremities are what are exposed. So when we see injuries, with the exception of some very major blast injuries, a lot of the many of the wounds occur to the extremities, whether it's a gunshot, an IED, or some other traumatic injury. So having a tourniquet available and being able to put it on and stop the leak immediately, it pretty much leads to a very positive outcome in survivability. Let's look at the civilian world. Again, with the global war on terror, we're seeing a lot of these pre-hospital medical skills and techniques coming back to the U.S. and being applied. So we're going to see these positive outcomes, new ways of doing things, new ways of managing trauma. So we're going to have a better pre-hospital response and higher survivability. In the civilian world, we're not afforded body armor. We're not going to walk around with our plate carrier and our Kevlar helmet pretty much anywhere we go. We're just not going to have this. So if we are involved in some sort of a traumatic situation, whether it's, again, a blast, a gunshot, or some other trauma, the probability of it happening just to our extremities is extremely low. Let's look at some numbers. In Vietnam, 10% of the fatalities came from blood loss from extremities only. And again, let's look at the context. Landmines were quite prevalent in Vietnam. We've heard of the Bouncing Betty. There's countless other mines out there, both improvised and actual military landmines. They were blowing off people's legs and they were dying because they weren't using tourniquets. The situation that they were in didn't really allow for this. In the civilian world, we don't see that. Looking at more data, in mass shootings from 1996 to about 2002, 0 people died solely from blood loss from the extremities. Again, look at these situations. We have a shooter, they're typically not trained, but they're going in and they're getting headshots and they're getting body shots. Sure, there's going to be some wounds to the extremities, but most people are dying from bleeding out to the torso and also head injuries. If we look at all trauma, so actually trauma from the hips down, so leg trauma, from 2002 till 2006, 2.8% of the fatalities came from blood loss. So again, statistically, a very, very low number. However, on the civilian market, we're seeing countless products being released, whether it's the SWAT T, which is essentially a big rubber band. We've got the RATS tourniquet here. We have the CAT. We have the soft T. There's numerous products that are coming out to help stop blood loss. This is great. This is wonderful. And we see a lot of concealed carriers. They're talking about their tourniquets. And we see this real focus on this one single tool when really the probability of having to use it in the civilian world is almost 0. Instead, we need to be able to treat injuries to the torso and to the head to stop leaks using whether it's chest seals or typically an improvised solution. When we're out and about, we're not always going to have our medical gear with us, our trauma pack, particularly here in Phoenix. I'm wearing shorts most of the time. Where am I going to put this stuff? So being able to improvise with things that I can find on scene to treat people's medical problems, that's, to me, more beneficial than even having a commercially available product. Where does that change? Whenever I go to the gun range, whenever I'm going to be around firearms, if I'm hunting, like you said, training or whatever, I always have a complete trauma kit with me, also known as an IFAK, with a tourniquet and other tools that'll help me solve problems. More importantly, it's not the tool. It's all about the skills, knowledge, and experience that you have. This comes from training and properly training, knowing when and how to apply a tourniquet, when it's going to help, and what is the proper use of it. So if you have a tourniquet, you need to go seek the training. We provide the training. There's numerous places where you can get the training, whether it's TCCC, TECC, the law enforcement version, wilderness medical training, whatever you take to learn how to solve these traumatic problems to increase the probability of success, that's where you're going to get the most bang for the buck. Dave Bremson with SafeMind, your defense is personal.